Here's a grizzly bear. Ah! Here's a hippopotamus. Here's an African bush. Join me today as we go on an adventure looking at skeletons, skulls, things that normally seem creepy. This museum lays it out beautifully. These are excellent displays, a lot of fun for families and kids. Come and join me as we visit the Museum of Osteology. Sorry, I probably mispronounced that, but essentially it's the Bone Museum. We're going to go see bones of lots of different animals, and yes, all the bones, all the skeletons in this museum are actually real. We have a dog skull being cleaned by the flesh-eating bugs. There's scavenger hunts sorted by age groups for you to do as you travel throughout the museum. Look at the massive size of this African bush elephant. This thing is huge. And it is out on display where you're allowed to touch it and feel it and see what an African bush elephant skeleton looks and feels like.
Share the card. Sorry.
This museum's skeletons are not fake skeletons, they're actually real skeletons. And here we see a write-up about what is a skeleton. It is an animal's internal support frame. This bony structure helps to protect the organs and aids in movement. Bones are rigid organs that form part of the endoskeleton of vertebrates. They also produce red and white blood cells and store minerals. Bone tissue is a type of dense connective tissue. That's really interesting. So here we are looking at a true human skeleton. Here we move on to a domestic dog. And down below the dog, we have a giant frog. Ooh, we have a piranha, a red-bellied piranha. A tortoise. A stork. We move over to different parts of an animal, and they're colored. First we have a penguin flipper, then we have a sea turtle flipper, and we have a dolphin flipper, comparing the different flippers. Here we have a red-flanked duiker. I hope I said that right. I have no idea what a duiker is. Here we have a chimpanzee. And check this out, we have a male and female pelvis. The left is the male, the right is the female. And it says the differences between the male and female pelvis reflects the fact that female pelvises have to serve as part of the birth canal. In female pelvises, the pelvic inlet is wider and more oval-shaped. The pelvic inlet in males tends to be more heart-shaped and more narrow. The pubic arch in females tends to form an angle closer to 90 degrees, and in the males forms an angle closer to 60 degrees. Up top here we have a Komodo dragon. Here we have a vulture, specifically the Carnivorous vulture, which is a scavenger feeding on carcasses left behind by other predators. Here, this display is dedicated to forensic science. It shows different impacts on the skull specifically and how forensics uses that information and what it may look like. So up top, we see a ballistic trauma. Oh, here we see skulls through different ages. We've got a fetus skull, a newborn, a 13 to 19 month old, a 16 to 22 month old, a 6 to 7 year old, 10 to 12 years old, and 12 to 14 year old. The top skeleton here is a Pacific white-sided dolphin. Down here we have a sea otter, a penguin, and here is a human looking like they're doing gymnastics. Here is a cheetah skeleton with a cheetah taxidermy next to it. The wreathed hornbill. Ooh, we have an osprey with a fish in its claws. Up here we have a sloth. A saiga. Here we have a wallaby. And down at the very bottom we have a rabbit. Here we have a display of primates, or as many of us may refer to them as monkeys. Now we move into the apes from the primate section. Here we have fossils of human skulls. Here is a sea otter, a ferret, hyena, and aardwolf. Down here we have the weasel with a taxidermy weasel next to it, and then a honey badger. We have the fisher, and a wolverine, and a sea otter. We move over, we find a red panda, a brown-nosed coati, and a kinkajou. Down at the bottom we have a skunk. And here's another skunk. And yet one more skunk. These are bear skulls. And this is a speckled bear. This one here is a sun bear. Here we have a meerkat. Here we have a collection from the cat species. We'll move down to the bottom with your domestic cat. Both of these are different types of a domestic cat. Here we have a serval. Then we have the snow leopard. Moving around the corner here, we have a lynx. Here's a tiger staring directly at us, followed by a cheetah, a jaguar in the middle there, and an African lion. Up top, we have a leopard and a mandrill. Hiding in the back, we have a clouded leopard. Here we have different types from the dog species. Here we have a coyote, a red wolf, a pit bull, and a Great Dane. And down in the corner, we have a Chihuahua. Up top, we have a fox, a jackal, and a bush dog. And then different skulls from the different breeds of domestic dogs. Here we have some of our friends from the sea. Let's take a look. So we see down on the bottom is a Hawaiian monk seal. This is a walrus, I guess, skull. And then we have a California sea lion. And up top here, we have a seal. And up top here, we have a seal. Here we find a display of different animals you will find in the state of Oklahoma. This big, large skeleton is the American bison, sometimes referred to as a buffalo, even though technically a buffalo is different than a bison. Flying above the bison, we've got a barred owl, a red-shouldered hawk. We find a diamondback rattlesnake taxidermy, a striped skunk, a muskrat. The skull is a pronghorn antelope. We find a fossil skull of a bison. And here's a roadrunner skeleton. If you were ever wondering how large a roadrunner is, they're not very large. Not like the cartoons. We have a red fox, a bobwhite quail, a raccoon eating trash, a 9-banded armadillo. Up here we have an alligator gar, which is a type of a fish. Look at the nasty teeth on that. Here we have a bobcat. We have a rat, a gopher, and a shrew. Then we have two different types of turtles hiding in the back, and the red river otter out front, followed by a beaver. This larger skeleton here is the white-tailed deer. And here we have a squirrel and an opossum. Here is the mourning dove. You may know the mourning dove by its call. It sounds like a bird that is kind of in mourning. And here we have two different woodpeckers. We've got the downy woodpecker and the red-bellied woodpecker. You see different types of bony fish. Here we have turtles. And here's a display of what happens when a turtle gets caught in plastic packaging. We move into crocodiles and alligators. And we have frogs and toads and salamanders. And we have a giant tortoise. Okay, let's be honest. This display creeps me out. I do not really like reptiles, and this is reptiles. Yes, that is a giant snake in the middle. Can you guess what it is? That giant snake is the green anaconda. And there's a cobra and a viper. This is a Komodo dragon. And this one standing up here, that is a king cobra. Definitely not one of my favorite displays. I do not like snakes. That almost sounded like a Dr. Seuss. I do not like snakes. I do not like them at all. I do not like them in a museum. I do not like them anywhere. Maybe I should stick to looking at these things and not trying to make up Dr. Seuss rhymes. This tall skeleton in the middle is a kangaroo. To the right here we have marsupials. And to the left, we actually have the Tasmanian devils, numrats, and dunarts. Directly in the middle here is a Tasmanian devil. Check out the wingspan on that bat. That is very large. Down here, we have shrews. Here's a platypus. Platypus always makes me laugh. There's a taxidermy platypus. There's the skeleton of a platypus. We have the domestic rabbit, and we have an Alaskan hare. Here we have hedgehogs. Here we're looking at some armadillos. And we move into an anteater. That is quite a large skeleton. That is quite a large skeleton. I did not realize anteaters were that large. Here's another three-toed sloth hanging in the tree. And a two-toed sloth also hanging in the tree. Here's a porcupine. It doesn't look as intimidating without the quills. Here we have an elephant skull. Look at the size of that skull. An aardvark. Here we have skeletons and skulls of whales, dolphins, and porpoises. Up top is a porpoise. And moving over to this side, we have a dolphin. And then here is a skull of a killer whale. Here we find a display of different birds. We'll try and find a few of the popular birds or more well-known birds. This tall one right here, this one, is a whooping crane. Here we have some macaws and a cockatoo and a snow goose flying directly at us. This one here is the speckled owl. Ooh, a condor. And it looks like the condor's dinner is a rabbit. A barred owl. Look at how large the barred owl is. Milky eagle owl. Ooh, the eastern turkey. And here's a quail. Hummingbirds. A cardinal. And way up top here, we have a canary hiding in the tree. Here we have the flightless birds, birds that cannot fly. Let's take a closer look. There are different types of penguins. Now this penguin looks like it's flying, but I assume that's the position it uses in the water. An African penguin. There's a taxidermy penguin. The emperor penguin standing tall. And a king penguin. Now we have antelope, gazelle, and cattle. So here we start with an antelope. These are muskox skulls. And the African Cape buffalo skull. And over here we have the gazelle. Here we have deer, sheep, and pronghorn. Here's the bighorn sheep. And over here we have a pronghorn. Here's a skull from a caribou. Here we have a display of giraffes, camels, hippos, pigs, and others. Look at that giraffe skull, how tall that is. Down here. Ooh, I don't know that I can say this one. Let's get a closer look at that name. Solwezi babirusa? I know I said that wrong. You may have a better way to say it. Go ahead and write down in the description what it is. An alpaca. Ooh, the skulls of camels. One here, and another camel here. Here we have a domestic horse. Zebra skulls. Here's a donkey. And a Malayan tapir. Here we have a rhinoceros. Here we have some large flightless birds. We have a big ostrich and an emu. And over here we have a cassowary and a ray. Here we have a pygmy sperm whale, a West Indian manatee, and this large skeleton is a humpback whale. And yes, that is a real skeleton of the humpback whale. Here we have a killer whale, not nearly as large as the humpback whale. This is a white rhino, and yes, it is out on display where you can touch it and feel it. This is a real skeleton. Here's a hippopotamus, again, another touchable skeleton, so you can see what it looks like and feels like. An African Cape buffalo, and a giraffe, and yes, that giraffe is about 2 stories tall. Here's an African bush elephant. Here's a grizzly bear. Ah! The grizzly bear is going to attack. There are a lot of displays here that you're allowed to touch. It is a great place to come and learn and see all the different skeletons on display. There's a lot of great things for kids here. Nothing here is scary. It's laid out very well to be educational. You've got large animals and small animals, common animals, and things you may have never heard of. This is a great museum that is well worth the visit. Don't forget to subscribe and join me on other great adventures.